Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Nick Gray, and I'm back with another smartphone camera comparison with the all-new Pixel 6 Pro from Google. I think a lot of people are really excited to see what the cameras on this device can do, and I'm going to be comparing this phone to the iPhone 13 Pro, which I'm using to record right now. Now, as I do in all of my smartphone camera comparisons, everything that you see in this video is being recorded on these two smartphones, so just keep an eye on the bottom of the screen to see which device and which cameras from that device are being used. Now, before we jump into the side-by-side photo and video comparisons, let's take a look at the specs to see how these two devices stack up on paper. So let's start things off with the Pixel 6 Pro and its triple camera system on the back of the phone, highlighted by the main 50 megapixel sensor. This is the first time we've seen an upgrade to Pixel's main sensor in a handful of years from the 12 megapixel sensors that they've been using for a while, and then a 48 megapixel sensor for the 4x periscope camera that you can see there with that square cutout, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. And for video capture, all of these can record 4K video at up to 60 FPS. Now, the front-facing camera here has also been upgraded as well with an 11.1 megapixel sensor that's peeking through the display, and it can also record 4K video limited to 30 FPS. But that's the first time we've seen 4K video capture from the selfie camera on a Pixel device. And then switching over to the iPhone 13 Pro, which also has a 3-camera setup on the back of the phone with 12 megapixel sensors for the main ultra-wide and 3x telephoto camera. And all of those can capture 4K video at 60 frames per second. And that 60 FPS also translates over to the 12 megapixel sensor on the front of the phone for 4K video capture as well. So now that we've gotten the specifications of the iPhone 13 Pro and the Pixel 6 Pro all squared away, let's jump into some side-by-side photo and video comparisons to see how these two devices stack up in the real world. Let's take a look. And this here's a look at video capture from both devices using the main sensors on the back of both phones, captured again at 4K, going from light to dark right here. Well, this is a parking garage that is fairly well lit. It's still quite a bit darker than what we were at outside. You definitely do get a much wider field of view on the iPhone when compared to the Pixel 6 Pro. This is with the ultra wide, switching over to the main sensor, and then zoom 4x telephoto versus 3x on the iPhone 13 Pro. And this here's a look at video capture from the selfie cameras on both of these devices. And I think I've mentioned this before, but the iPhone 13 Pro and the Pixel 6 Pro both can capture 4K video. And this is the very first time that we've seen 4K video capture from a Pixel device. Typically, we've been limited to 1080p, so it's nice to see the bump in resolution here with the larger sensor, which definitely does a much better job than what we've seen on previous Pixel devices. You gonna run? Yeah. Run! You buying a new house? And this here's a look at video capture in low light situations. You can definitely see that the iPhone 13 Pro does have the advantage with the ultra wide, but then moving into the main camera sensor on both of these devices, things clear up a little bit on the Pixel, and then going in all the way for the zoom 4x on the Pixel 6 Pro, 3x on the iPhone 13 Pro. And this here's a look at video capture from the front-facing cameras on both of these devices in low light conditions. I'd have to say it's really hard to tell from just looking at the screens to see which device performs better, but as I step out of the light, we'll see what it really does when it comes really, really low light conditions. after taking a closer look at video from the selfie cameras, I do have to say I do prefer what I see from the Pixel 6 Pro, especially when it comes to the detail. I don't know if you can take a look at my forehead or my face, the beard. You can definitely see a little bit more detail on the Pixel 6 Pro than you can on the iPhone 13 Pro in low light situations like this. It's definitely not that big of a difference when it's daylight conditions, but when it's low light like this, there's definitely a lot more noise in the iPhone's video. And that's going to do it for this camera test between the iPhone 13 Pro and Google's new Pixel 6 Pro, which I'm using right now. Let me know what you think of the results in the comments below and which device you would rather use on a day-to-day basis for capturing your photos and videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see more camera comparisons with the Pixel 6 Pro, make sure you subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for that. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next one.